Hey, it's Ramon. Here's something from the Michael Berry Show you may have missed. Brought to you by Oops Steam Cleaning.
The Michael Berry Show.
I received the following email. Czar, I'm a longtime listener to the podcast, but I've never reached out to you before. I'm doing so now on behalf of Anita Dixon. I served in the United States Army with her son, Evan Parker, who was killed while we were deployed to Iraq in 2005. The officer who received him in Germany from Iraq and kept him alive until his family could get there to say their goodbyes is writing a book with Anita called Honest Honor. It's not just about Evan. They want it to be a platform for all who served in Iraq and Afghanistan to tell their stories. Anita's been very active with other Gold Star parents, having experienced her loss before much of the groundwork was laid to care for the families of the fallen, and determined to make it better for the Gold Star parents that would inevitably come after her. She was even featured in a Super Bowl commercial a couple of years ago. No guarantees the story will make the book, but they've set up a website for service members to tell their stories, experiences, good and bad, tributes to fallen brothers, and more. It is at honesthonor.com. I'd be so grateful if you could get the word out to your vast veteran audience to assist with this project and honor my friend Evan Parker, who passed. Anita would be a great guest on your show, and I would be happy to set that up. His name is Joel, and he did. Anita Dixon, welcome.
Thank you. Yes.
First, tell me what unfortunately brought you to the point where you needed to do this project.
Well, I think it has been on my heart and retired Lieutenant Colonel Ken Grundy's heart for the last 13 years. And he just recently retired, and I think it was just time that he just told his story. And he wanted many of the other service members and veterans that had, should I say, history of their military service to be able to share as well. And, and he let me know right off the bat, he says, this just isn't about what I did for Evan. And he says, I don't want it to be, and I hope you understand that, but he says, I also want it to be about so many of the other service members telling their story and letting us understand their service to our country and preserve history that is maybe getting lost. People don't know. People don't understand.
Who was Evan? Tell me about him.
Evan was my second son. He was born in 1980. He was born May 1st, so he was my May basket. And from very early age, this boy was a scrapper. He would get into all sorts of trouble. He would never back down. He was as strong as a freight train, and he just, in everything he did, he just gave it his all. And, we grew up in a farm, a very rural farm in Kansas, and he was very active in sports. And he graduated and went on to college on a scholarship. And all of a sudden, one night, he called and he said, it was at 11 o'clock at night, and he said, Mom, are you sitting down? And I said, Evan, it's 11 o'clock at night. I'm laying down. What's wrong? And he said, well, I have to tell you something. I said, oh, honey, what did you do now? And he says, I joined the Army. And there, it just went from there. He was proud. He was honored to do what he did, and got sent over to Schofield Barracks, Honolulu, Hawaii. And he put that down on his first choice out of Fort Sill, Oklahoma, and Fort Riley in Kansas. And, he was like, who gets their first choice? I'm going to Hawaii. And then he was there for the next, 2.5, 3 years. So.
And then?
And then he he got out, and he was in the Army Reserve, and he had a 7-year window that he had signed up for, and they called him back. And he deployed out to Iraq with the 1st 487th Field Artillery Team, and went to Iraq. He was at LSA Anaconda, Iraq.
And what happened?
He went over there. He got over there in January of 2005, and very active in his field artillery. He was a fire support specialist, and he did have a pretty devastating head concussion in May, and they called me. They let me know. They said everything was okay. He'd be calling me, and he did. And they put him on desk duty for a while, and he got his first Purple Heart. And he came home in July for his 17-day R&R, and he was different, very, very different. And, basically said, I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to see anything on the news or on the TV. He says, I just want to relax and have fun and eat all the food I can eat. And I said, okay. And then it got ready for him to go back. And he said, no, I don't want you to come to the airport. And I said, okay. He says, if you come to the airport, I'm not going to get on that airplane, and I got to go back. I said, okay. So he went back, and the week before the injury date, he called every day. And which was very unusual. We sent him phone cards, because that was back when you either stood in line or you had to go, and one base would call another base. And so we gave him phone cards. And so he called every day, and called a lot of the family members every day and just talked to them. Well, on Saturday morning, he called again, and I was fixing breakfast, and he goes, hey, Mom. And I said, Evan, I said, you've called every single day. I said, is everything okay? He said, yeah, everything's fine. He says, I'm going out on night patrol, but he says, I just wanted to call and tell you I love you. I said, well, honey, I really love you too. I said, are you sure everything's okay? He goes, yes, everything's okay. I just wanted to tell you I love you. And he says, gotta go. And I said, okay. Well, the next morning I was getting ready to go to church.
Anita, just one moment. Can you hold with us?
Okay.
All right. The website is honesthonor.com. Honesthonor.com.
Michael Berry Show.
Boy, you're gonna know it all. You'll think you're 10 feet tall. Run like you're bulletproof and total a car or two. Boy, you're gonna hate this town. Wish you could burn it down. That fire in your eyes is 20 counties wide. But boy, you're gonna love 17. Boy, you'll do some stupid things. You're gonna drive and kiss and throw a punch and grow up way too fast. You're gonna drop the ball, hit the wall, and break some hearts like glass. I know you will, 'cause you're a part of me and a part of you who will always be. Boy, you gonna be so stubborn. You get that from your mother. I already see it now. You weren't built for backing down. Boy, there'll be a small town night. You'll fall for her sky blue eyes. And when she's in your hands, you'll think you're a man and not a boy.
Anita?
She'll make you lose your
No, sorry. Anita?
Yes.
Sorry about that. I forgot to pot you back up. Can you pick up where you left off? So Evan was calling, and you sensed something was wrong, and go ahead from there.
And, he just kept repeating that, that he just wanted to call to tell me that he loved me, and said he was going out on night patrol, and he would have the next 3 days. And so he'd call again, but he says, I got to go. And I said, okay. So then the next morning I was getting ready for church, and I got a phone call, and they asked me if I was who I was. And I said, yes, sir. And they said, well, we're calling from command, and we just want to let you know there was an attack last night, and your son Evan they called him Sergeant Parker, took a IED piece of shrapnel to the head. And they said it doesn't look good, but we are transporting him into surgery right now in Balad. And if he makes it out, we will let you know, and we will be sending him to Landstuhl, Army Medical Facility in Germany. I said, okay. They said, we will let you know as soon as we know something. And, I didn't know anything about the military. I mean, Evan was over all the years, he was very quiet about his military service. So there was a lot that I just didn't know. Didn't know how all of these things really went, how they did things. So I waited. I, called the rest of my family members, and I waited. And then in the middle of the afternoon, I got a phone call, and they said, well, he made it out of surgery, and we are life watching him with his friend that was with him that lost both of his legs. We're life watching both of them to Landstuhl. And when the neurosurgeon receives him over there, then they'll give you a call back. And they said, we would like for you to prepare yourself and 2 other family members. We're going to, if we can, we want to bring you to Germany. I said, okay. And so we waited, and then I got a phone call that night at about midnight, and they said we received him, and we're just going to tell you right now he's brain dead, and there's no hope for survival, and but we would like to keep him alive, and we're bringing you to Germany. Please be to the nearest airport, which was Wichita, Kansas, by 8 o'clock in the morning. I said, okay. And so we prepared, we got ourselves rounded up, and I told him, I said, none of us have passports. And they said, we'll take care of that in Chicago, when you land in Chicago. And they did. And then we got on a flight, Lufthansa, to Germany. We were met in Frankfurt. We were taken to Landstuhl, and we were able to be with him for 24 hours before we had to remove him from life support. And the nurse, Major Grundy, that got the phone call at Landstuhl that a medevac was coming in, he said, something just told me that I need to go down to the tarmac. I need to pick up these soldiers coming in. And he says, so I just went. He says, I told him I was going. And so we went down there, and he says, I immediately was just driven to Evan. He was the worst one of the 2. And so he said, I took care of him. And literally for 3 days, Major Grundy didn't even sleep. I mean, his major thing was to keep Evan alive, keep Evan going until we got there. And he said, I was so afraid that something would happen because they had him on all sorts of monitors. They all drips, everything. His organs were failing. He was running the temp. And so he kept him going until we got there. And then when, he did pass, but his several of his command came up from Iraq to be with him, and he got his second Purple Heart as we removed him from life support and let him go. And, they gave us time, to be with him. And so then they said, well, we will get you ready, and we will send you back home, and we'll send Evan, to Dover. And so, we'll get all that. And I just kind of looked at him and I said, what? You're sending us home separately? And they go, well, yeah. And I said, no. I said, I'm not leaving Germany without my son. I said, we're going home together. And they go, well, ma'am, that's not kind of how things are done. And I said, well, I'm not leaving here without my son. And so they got in preparation and tried to see if they could make it happen. And they finally decided that, and the problem was that we as civilians couldn't go on a military flight, and it was very difficult to have a soldier's body on a commercial flight. So, I put kinks in their plan, but I wasn't willing at that point to back down. And they made it happen. And then Major Grundy come up to us and he says, I would like to be his escort. Of course, we didn't know anything about what that meant. And so he explained it to us, and he says, I've never been an escort. I'm not even prepared. But he said, would you ask for me? I said, sure, not a problem. And so we told command, and they go, well, Major Grundy, that's not his job. And I like, well, we want it to be his job. He's been with him for the last 3 days. We want him as an escort. So they prepared him and to do that. And then 3 days later, we all went home together. And Major Grundy never left Evan's side. From the moment that we got him off the airplane to the moment they laid him in the ground, he never left his side, stood at attention. And if the funeral home was open...
Anita, hold on just a moment.
The star of talk radio. All I ever wanted to do was fly, leave this world and live in the sky. I left the C-130 out of Fort Worth town. I go up some days, I don't wanna come down. Well, I fly that plane, call the Angel Flight. Come on, brother, you're with me tonight. Between heaven and earth, you're never alone. On the Angel Flight, come on, brother, I'm taking you home. I love my family and I love this land, but tonight this flight's for another man. We do what we do 'cause we heard the call. Some gave a little, but he gave it all. I fly that plane, call the Angel Flight. And come on, brother, you're with me tonight. Brother, you're with me tonight. Between heaven and earth,
Czar. I'm listening to this mom, Anita, talk about her son, Evan. It is heartbreaking, but it is something that I needed to hear today. She is a moving person and a special mother. I was a paratrooper. As such, I never thought what my potential loss would do to my mom. She is an amazing woman that raised an amazing son for America, this Miss Dixon. With the constant beat of the petty news, this reminds me of how lucky I am and how blessed I have been. I need to remember moms like Anita more often. The website is honesthonor.com. Anita?
Yes.
Please proceed. I'm just going to turn off my microphone.
So Major Grundy brought Evan home, and he never left his side. We come home on Lufthansa into Atlanta, and Atlanta on into Kansas City. And there was transportation, across the tarmac, and they asked people to, remain in their seats on the flight, and that happened, and we got so much honor, let me say, and so did Major Grundy. But he stayed with him, and he stayed in attention by his side until we lowered him into the ground. And that's when Major Grundy come to me and said, it's time to go home. And he was from Rhode Island, still lives there. So it's been my experience of losing Evan and how it all happened. And back then in 2005, there wasn't any, there wasn't any help for us family members. And we just all struggled along ourselves. And then in 2008, they adopted what was called Survivor Outreach Services to reach out to the family members that have lost. And I remember another mother and I from Leavenworth that lost her son David in 2006. We were in Washington, D.C., and we were for Memorial Day, and we were on the lawn for the concert, and we were visiting with the general that was starting to adopt this Survivor Outreach program. And he asked for me and Diana to, take our wisdom and our knowledge and what we had went through the last 2 or 3 years and take it back to Kansas and try to help start it. Well, it wasn't but a couple of months later that we got a phone call from the base command out of Fort Riley Army, and we were there, and we helped set up and adopt and promote the program for Survivor Outreach Services in the state of Kansas, kind of giving them our wisdom and knowledge, what was needed and necessary for families, and anywhere from finances to support to just the program in general, how they can reach out to people. So that kind of started what I've done over the years, the places I've been, the things that I've done, the strength I think that I've received from just the veterans and the service members. And I'm telling you right now, I couldn't have done it without them. They produced, they promoted, they held me up, they directed, they were there for me through what they had went through in their military service. And a lot of the Vietnam vets, I had wonderful opportunities to be a part of the Patriot Guard, the American Legion Riders, the VFW Riders, and, those were a lot of your Vietnam vets that I think finally was able to start to heal and able to give back for us. And I think there's many of us that will tell you that we couldn't have made it and been as strong as we are without them.
Anita, hold on. I want to talk about the program and how people can be a part, how other families can be a part of this. One moment.
It's the Michael Berry Show. Michael Berry.
Shadows are falling and I'm running out of breath. Keep me in your heart for a while. If I leave you, it doesn't mean I love you any less. Keep me in your heart for a while. When you get up in the morning and you see
Warren
that
Zevon
crazy
passed
sun,
September 7th,
keep me in
2003.
your heart for a while.
He was born on this day in 1947, which means he would have been 72 years old today. Anita, how did you get involved with HonestHonor.com?
Well, like I said, retired Lieutenant Colonel Ken Grundy was Evan's escort. He was Evan's nurse. And like I said, this has been a dream for him to want to do, and I think now that he's retired, he's got an opportunity to spend time on it and do it. So it's our efforts to reach out to the service members, the veterans, family members, to tell us your stories, preserve the history that you have in your hearts, preserve it to us. There's events that are being missed. There's events that are not being told. There's things that are not being said, and it's important.
Why is it important?
It's important because it preserves our history. It tells people who you are and what you went through, and able to give us more honor and respect, and for you, for your events, for our history, and we can go out and we can go forth and we can use that to spread, to teach, to educate. So much is being lost. So much is not being told. Young kids don't know, and they need to. They need to know what they went through. They need to know those stories.
What do you do for a living?
What do I do for them?
No, for a living.
For a living. I'm retired.
What did you do?
I was a respiratory therapist that worked in critical care and trauma for years. I retired back in 15. My husband, second marriage, we've been married for 11 years, and he's retired Master Sergeant Air Force. So I kind of got back into the military service. I was a single mom when I lost Evan. I had been for about 9 years, and then I married the military. So
I don't think there was a dry eye in the audience or our studio when you told that story. But you have a steely resolve while talking. Would that have been the case 14 years ago, or did that come with time?
That came with time. 14 years ago, I was just trying to keep my head above water. I was just trying to, I guess, maybe survive and move on. And I just started, like I said, so many people held me up. So many people strengthened me and kindly pushed me into a direction. And I guess it was just my way of continual healing. It's my way of honoring Evan. And I told Evan when we let him go off of life support, when we, pulled the tube, I told him, I said, you will always be remembered. You will never be forgotten. And your name will constantly be spoken. And I have kept that promise to him, and I continue to keep that promise to the last breath that I breathe. He will always be remembered.
Well, he has a very special mother.
I like to think that he would be proud, and he would be like the Soldier's Creed states, I am continuing his mission. And I will.
My friend and my congressman, Dan Crenshaw, I don't know if you remember on Saturday Night Live a few months ago, they made a joke about he wears an eye patch because he lost an eye in war. He's a Navy SEAL, and he was recently elected to Congress. I don't know if you saw that whole story. But through it all, he used it as an opportunity to talk about how important it is that we never forget. Yes. And I think you have to experience loss to understand the importance of that, the meaning that those who are gone, we preserve them by never forgetting, and that it's a constant effort, right? It's an undertaking. It does not happen. We naturally forget. We naturally move forward, not backward. We put things behind us. That's how we cope. We close them up. We put that book on the shelf and we move on. And I think it is a great honor to be remembered. And I think that's why monuments matter. Monuments are ways that we say this person was special, and so we won't let them be forgotten to history. I think that's why the Vietnam Memorial, where you put names on a wall, I think that's why we do things. There's so many different ways. That's what a headstone is, right? A headstone is a way of saying there is still a place in this world, on this earth, there is still a place that name is written down, that someone might pass and see that name. So, well, Thank you for being our guest. Thank you for sharing your story. And thank you for being willing, out of your own pain and coping over all these years, to do something for so many others, because I think you recognize that that's part of how you've healed.
Yes.
Well,
it has been my honor, and I've always said, when I'm able to share, I just gave you a piece of my son. And that is so very important to me.
Well, Evan Parker is remembered. The website is honesthonor.com. Anita Dixon, thank you very much, dear. Wow. Wow. What a testimony, huh? What a testimony. I may hug a few of those veterans at our job fair, which starts right now until 5 o'clock. I'll go over there when we finish in the next hour. I may hug a few of them a little closer, because it is not whether you perish in battle or not that is heroic. It was the willingness of every veteran that they would if their number was called.
MichaelBerry.com